So we're going to wrap a little bit. I'd again encourage you to stick around and network and find people that you may not have met before in this room. But we're going to hear from Jose Gonzalez last here. Jose is not just a very powerful speaker, but he's also the founder of Latino Outdoors. He's a poet, an artist, and really over all that, he is an illustrator, and he's going to help illustrate some concepts that are relevant to our discussions and help us move on. Let's hear it for Jose.
All right, thank you, everyone. I want to start this. I'll try to be pithy. I've been expressing a couple of thoughts around this work on some Medium posts. Just out of curiosity, has anyone here read them? A few. I thought so. If that interests you, I encourage you to go do that. So you'll be a little more expansive in what I'm sharing, and there's 2 more to come in terms of the next steps. I have a couple of ideas that I want to present to you to build on what Diana and Reggie said. I remember the very first time that I felt not included in this industry, that I felt not a part of this culture, like not a part of whatever all of this is. I resisted coming to outdoor retailer for the first at least 2 years because I didn't know why it mattered to me. There was just this expectation that you should be here. And I didn't know what that was. Finally, it was through a relationship. Stacy Bear, he's missing this show. So if you follow him on Facebook, he's putting up stuff just to say, this is the FOMO that I'm feeling. But it was Stacy, so a white male veteran, who said, I don't know why you're not coming, and what can I do to bring you here? Because obviously you're trying to do something with this idea of Latino outdoors. And I told them, I don't know how you get a badge. I don't know why I should go. I don't understand the scheduling system. It feels more work and stress than I need right now when we're just trying to figure out what this community of Latino outdoors that we're building. Right? But he said, come, and we will cover your badge. It took a relationship that was my first connection to REI. Somebody that said, you know what, let's meet for coffee. We've been going back and forth on Twitter. And I'd like to know what you're doing, what you're saying, and I want to introduce you to somebody. Right? And so through that relationship at REI, we have been able to expand access to a lot more people that I think, in my opinion, has been taken for granted. Not because we should just say this is good enough, but because I understand the frustration that comes from understanding how it's comparable to what's not working. It can dominate the conversation. And I agree, right? We will always see what's not good enough. My question was always and how does that relate to what is now and what was and what isn't? Because it took a relationship through Kenji when he was telling me, I remember when it was 6 of us, we had to meet at a diner restaurant, right, off-site, Salt Lake City, is that correct? Because we got us. Because somewhere in the show, it's too easy to not feel that sense of connection. And it was through that relationship that I was introduced to other individuals like Luis Benitez, right? It was through a relationship that I first met Dr. Carolyn Finney. And I got to hear her speak through a fellowship that was intentionally about bringing people together to figure out what the future is going to look like 2042 for kind of people of color. Right? And then lastly, it's through a relationship that I agree to even keep coming to this space. Right? To think about what does it mean to have any sort of credibility, voice, authenticity, and influence to help others. To know that if I'm going to look in the eyes of someone like Alejandro here in the front, who has all the passion and excitement that I had 6 years ago, and to say, am I going to be able to give that to him, or am I going to give to him the frustration, the disillusionment, and the hurt, that I think that's easy to do. I can communicate that, I can share that, I can have that in conversation, but I think about, what am I gifting him? Because this is his first outdoor retailer show. And he already has to deal with like the overstimulus of what the show is. And he reminded me of a conversation with Teresa Baker yesterday, and this is not my story to share, only the learning, that she said, I got a reminder from a young kid that what I'm saying doesn't just influence this space, but how do I answer an 8-year-old when now I hear them saying, trying to state the understanding of what I'm saying, and I'm not hearing the gifting and the hope and the possibility. I'm hearing them state the same frustrations that I have. So what am I gifting them? And that mattered to me because I wrote a couple of questions, and then I'll close why I was talking a lot about fire. So I put on here, some questions that I face in this work are, does holding each other accountable mean punishment? And they're questions. I don't have answers specifically for you, but they're what help guide me in terms of why I show up anyways. Because I'll be honest to you, I don't need this. I really don't. Outdoor industry does not pay my bills. Outdoor industry does not give me a career path. And outdoor industry doesn't give me anything other than a sense that I can support and build community. Right? And I say that because that's what Latino Outdoor Starting was. You know, to look at Maricela, to look at Chela, to look at others that have moved on into other positions and to other work, and knowing that, yeah, we messed up all the time. We did a lot of things that were hard, and yet people stuck around because it's like, I believe in being able to create something for somebody else that I did not have. Right? And that we could acknowledge that we may have personal issues, that we create a space to talk about them, and I still have love for the community. And I hear sometimes that from them, and I'm like, damn, I need to keep hearing that. Right? Do we miss opportunities to model and practice in place of telling and punishing? I don't know. My background is in education. I'm a school teacher, actually. My first teaching job was to run the discipline and intervention room. That means that all of you that got in trouble, which were black and brown kids, went to my room, and your role was to be quiet, do the work, and face the wall. Why did I take that job? That's me being complicit in the system. I agreed to follow district policies around that. But I took it because it's like, what am I going to be able to do to tell the parents of these kids and their families and the kids themselves that there is a different way? And we managed to make it out there. The only reason I left is because I wanted to pursue a graduate degree. And what gave me hope was running into some of those kids years later. One of them was a senior in high school. So this was an 8th grader when I was teaching there. He's like, yo, Mr. G. And I was like, who is this? And he's like, remember me? And I was, in my head, I was like, yeah, you're the one that gave me daily hell. And he's like, I just want to let you know, I got accepted into college, and like, you didn't give up on me. And he's like, I'm sorry that I know I threw tantrums at you. Right? And I said, thanks, man. I'm glad to know where you're going. And the thing that I always told is, we are here to model and practice. Because I can tell you what you should be doing, and I can punish you for that. The system is set up for that. Easy. In fact, I can come in and collect a paycheck easily by just making sure that if you don't follow the rules, you're out. Modeling and practicing was hard. But it was also so beautiful when I saw those kids that were designated gang members by the city in 8th grade look at me, he's like, hey, Mr. G. And they would take out a tie and put it on and say, check me out. And I was like, what is this about? Well, remember when we did a Dress for Success Day and you didn't, like you were telling us just to try it out, and then we did it, and then all the teachers were freaking out because they didn't know what was going on, and they were like, who is this kid? And we're like, that was such a different thing for us. A couple last ones, and I'll close. Are we acting out of love for ourselves and our communities, or out of fear and pain? What we experience is real. I can come up here and tell you every single instance in which I've felt screwed over by this space. Sometimes we joke about it, that I get confused for Juan or for Luis. But it's not a joke. Right? It's not a joke in terms of, hey, Luis, it's like me saying like, Reggie, Joe, do you really look the same? Yeah, well, glasses, goatees, right?
Half or gray.
Half or gray. What is this in service of? Is ego playing a role? I do that ego check every single day. If I chose to operate out of ego, I would be telling you a very different thing at times. I would be acting in a very different way. And frankly, that's a game that I know how to play, but I choose not to. And last three, where did these tools come from? As Joe said today, what are we willing to unlearn? And that's hella hard, because our brains are wired for the things that we know that are comfortable and familiar, and that the spaces have taught us can work for a specific outcome. The question, just wondering, is that the tool that's going to be effective? Am I forcing accountability at the expense of ensuring responsibility? That one's hard because accountability matters, period, across the space. It does. Without it, there's no point in doing anything, because we can't measure it. We can't say, you made a mistake and here's how we can address and fix it. Responsibility is ensuring that, hey, I'm going to hold you in because I care that you can do this. Rather than just like, it's easy for me to like keep you out there, and then what happens if you leave the space with more power and privilege than I ever had? This is what I alluded to yesterday. It's like, it's easy for Reggie to say, I don't need to listen to you. Does that change the power dynamic? No, because Reggie still in his role, and I am not building trust and relationship with someone like him in that space. Right? And lastly, I say ultimately for me, a deeper question is, am I inviting healing? Because we have had, even in this country, pick 300 plus years of oppression. That has been incredible. It has worked incredibly well for a lot of things. I don't mean that's good. I mean it's worked well. That's what's kept repeatedly people in slavery. It's what's repeatedly supported genocide. It's taught us a lot of things about what works and what's been missing. Healing is hard because it requires a lot of internal work that many of us are not able, willing, or have challenges to do. Sharing and expressing our hurt, while necessary and valid to be able to understand where that comes from, can be easier. Right? And I share these questions because of my own process in healing in this space. It isn't about like pointing to somebody else and say, you should be doing this, you should be doing that, because as somebody reminded me, careful how you should on each other, right? Don't be shooting. And so I close with this metaphor of the fire, which I welcome you to read and tell me what you think, because it does feel like we're burning at times. It does feel like everything's on fire, or we may misunderstand when we say, burn it down. Because for me, nature says, fire is useful if you respect it, if you understand it, if you listen to the ancestral wisdom of the original stewards to say, fire was a tool to be able to continue to support and create healthy ecosystems. Right? And fire is sacred. Fire is a tool. Fire can be extremely destructive and dangerous through lightning. But nature can remind you that there's a healing process, there's a succession. There's a place for the fire, and there's a place for the flowers. And there's a place where everything comes between. If we don't pay attention to that, it's too easy to say, burn that down, and that's still not good enough, burn that down, and then it's still not good enough, and burn that down. And we may miss out on the opportunities to see what those flowers are and what grows. And lastly, I close by saying this is not about how we move forward in the space. Isn't not about perfection or about saying, you know, just forgive me, or like mistakes will not happen, or I wish it was different, or don't call me out. It's about, my last thing to say, what we did at Spark 2020 and the In Solidarity event was, are we willing to show the behaviors and the practice for what we're saying? And I'll be honest with you right now at this moment, I feel relatively clear on the path and how to do it. Where I feel less relatively clear is on our willingness to do it. So that's the ask, that's the challenge, and that's the test. So I don't know. I'm fascinated to see what's going to happen over the next year. And as even I do my own work to transition out, and wish you all good luck. Onward.
Awesome. Really well done. Jose, that was truly the expression of poetic and illustrative that you promise every time you pick this up, so thank you. And by the way, his article is called Fire, Power, and Love. It's Jose G. Gonzalez on medium.com if you want to find that. Really insightful and I think relevant. So I won't add too much more. I just ask one more thing of you, and that is that you continue to help this movement along through your community, but also if you can communicate back to me and what you think that this event should be next time, who it can include, where are the examples of excellent leadership, of creativity and solutions around DEI that exist at all the different levels in the industry and out there that we can import or copy or just share, and continue to tell the stories of what's going right and where there's been progress, as I've seen over my career. So lastly, again, invite you to introduce yourself to one or two people you may not know already. Grab yourself a copy of The Voice and read James's article, and let Christine know if you want a ticket to the 5 Point Film Festival tonight at the Paramount. Other than that, I thank you again from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for coming. It means a lot to me to see your faces here, and we'll see you around town and the industry.